Join live Africans United, Know Thyself, Black Power Radio on Oak 93.5. Each and every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. where we discuss solutions to black communities local and globally. With Brother Escents Divine, Dr. Kimberly Muktarian, and Brother Ausar, Amen. With special guests every week, you can follow Africans United, Know Thyself, Black Power Radio on Facebook.com/Oak 93.5. Or you can engage in conversation by calling 919-899-9305. Once again, each and every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. right here on Oak 93.5.
Peace to the elders, the ancestral giants. Peace to gods and goddesses past, present, and future. Peace to kings, queens, and royal families all over. And peace to you, brothers and sisters. You tune into Oak 93.5 FM, Africans United, Know Thyself, Black Power Radio, where ancient wisdom meets modern truth. With the Honorable Brother Escents, man.
Anakasa, a BB for Hodier, African liberation, black liberation, African power, black power. For every black man, woman, and child on the planet, we are the original people. I am the original man. I am a son of Africa. Peace to the listening audience.
The Queen, Dr. Kimberly Muktarian.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us from wherever you listen and look. We are just excited today about our topic about love, loyalty, and honor, and that is one of the things that stabilizes the African American community is the ability to honor one another and have unity.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Escents Divine, and today's conversation is about African liberation, and more specifically about the values that make liberation real.
Yes.
Love, loyalty, and honor. And too often we talk about freedom only in political terms, but liberation is also spiritual, cultural, familial, and moral. It is not just about what we oppose. It is also about what we build. If we want a future worthy of our ancestors, then we must ask what kind of people, what kind of relationships, and what kind of institutions are we creating? African liberation is not just a struggle of the past. It is a daily practice. It shows up in how we organize ourselves, how we love one another, how we raise our children, and how seriously we take our responsibility to the people. And with that in mind, let's begin our discussion. Brother Ausar, can you give us some examples of how these values were central to past liberation struggles and central to nation building today?
Well, the values that are important to our liberation movement are values that our ancestors put in place for us years ago. The values of the knowledge of self, self-love, love of our brothers and sisters, respect for our elders, respect for our children, the proper raising and education of our children, the caring for those who are hungry, right? Protection of nature, right? The protection of the weak and oppressed. All of these are high values that help to ground us in who we are as a people. And in order for us to reach the liberation that we need as a people, the first thing we have to do as individuals is to get on the path of understanding who we are, understanding our culture, liberating our minds. Once we're able to start liberating our minds, we'll start to see the bigger picture, the larger liberation movement for us as an African people from a Pan-African standpoint. It takes a lot of work for us to get to that point because of everything that has been stripped from us over the last 400 and something years, since the transatlantic slave trade, and to be honest, even before that. And I like to reference Chancellor Williams, the destruction of black civilization, which goes back even further than that. It goes back to BC and the invasion and things that was done to us. So it's important for us to really understand history, understand our cultural values, and also at the same time understand the current situation that we're in today. And so in order for us to really understand the liberation movement, and for us to fight for liberation, first thing we had to do, as we're taught in the 10 virtues of an initiate, is control your thoughts. But these thoughts have got to be African-centered thoughts, based off of our values and our views, based off what is beneficial to us as a people, as a collective whole. Right. The second one is control your actions. Once we're able to control our actions, and then we put our thoughts into practice, we put our cultural thoughts into practice, our cultural way of doing things, that which is going to unify us and not divide us. So examples of the past in the liberation movement, right, are examples like Marcus Garvey and what he was able to do, right? And it's important for us to understand a lot of times when we have greats like Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King, and many others, we be like, well, look at the position we're in now. But remember, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, our ancestors. So we understand the values and principles, and we understand that there's going to always be a counter to our liberation move. So we have to have a counter for their liberation move. We have to be in opposition to everything that our oppressors and our enemies do to us, while at the same time affirming our place in history, who we are as a people, as the original people on the planet, and understanding what we have to do in order to really reach true liberation.
Doctor, can you like to add to some examples?
Well, I often think about who we are as a people. And we are more internal than we are external. So then when we see ourselves, we see ourselves as spiritual beings. Love, liberty, honor, those things are not something physical that you can tangibly obtain. These are deep-rooted things that ground the very being of who we are, the essence of who we are. And I think in a capitalist society, we lose sight of that. And so what I would suggest is that we have to go back to our internal purpose, which is greater. That's what made us great from the beginning. We were the original people. We didn't compete with anybody. We didn't have to be in survival or subject to anything or anybody. We are now having to redefine ourselves by now going back to understanding who we were from the beginning. And that is essential to our liberation, is to arrest our mind. And I think Brother Ausar said it best when we say, know thyself. And I don't know all the steps, but I do know when we talk about understanding who we are, that takes a deliberate effort. You have to stop and think who you are before you act based off of what somebody has given you to be. And so, we're calling for a collective mindset change.
Right. Yes.
That's what we're calling for. We're calling for the African, across the diaspora, to remember who you are. I love the example of what Ibrahim Turi is doing. Because of his enlightenment of who he believes that they are, he's able to kick everybody else out with whatever definition they have. It doesn't matter. He reminded his people that you can supply for yourself. You don't need somebody else to supply for you. You can be. We are going to be liberated ourselves because we are kicking out every lie or liars so that we can gain our own liberation. And I would say that liberation is just a thought away.
Yes.
The resources will always be there. The Creator made the resources. It's our mindset that needs to be changed. And as soon as we can recognize who we are, then all the lies are dispelled. And I think most of the oppressor's job is to make sure we never gain that understanding. But through these teachings and reminders and the foundations, it is how we get back to the path of the righteousness that who we really are.
Right. You mentioned Ibrahim Traore. That's a great example of today showing of the values in today's time. You mentioned Marcus Mosiah Garvey. That's a great example. Malik Shabazz, Huey P, Bobby Seale, all of them knew the duty was for the upliftment of fallen humanity, and that's
Yes.
a great display of showing love, loyalty, and honor. Um,
Right, and
help.
if I may,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, because I also think it's important for us to understand, you know, a lot of the freedom fighters, like Steve Biko from South Africa, Patrice Lumumba,
Yes.
from the Congo,
Yes.
Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso,
Mhm.
who these brothers were, brutally murdered,
Right.
assassinated for speaking up for African unity and African liberation and African power. And I think that that's one thing basically that we need to focus on more as a people, right? And when we talk about African power, we're talking about at the same time African leadership who has to display love, loyalty, and honor to the people, right? And not just themselves, right? Because we need to have leaders who practice selfless service and put the people before they put anything else. Like the great example Dr. Kim just gave.
Yes.
Captain Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso, right? Where he just still receiving the salary of a captain. He's not trying to live an extravagant lifestyle because he understands the value of his people.
Yes.
And the value of African life, right? And he's basically following the footsteps of one of our greats, Thomas Sankara, former president of Burkina Faso, who was basically assassinated, right? So when we understand that, the power of our voice, right, will reach millions,
Yes.
right? When we show the example, like Ibrahim Traore is showing by kicking France out, right? The French. And the same thing can happen for the rest of Africa. And this is where the leadership has to be courageous
That's
and
right.
honest, right? You can't just be correct. You have to be honest and you have to be honorable and loyal to your people. And the way we get to this loyalty is through the knowledge of self, because to know thyself is to love thyself. And also to understand that when we're talking about the self, a lot of times people get caught up in the individual self, but it's the universal self.
Yes.
It's the African self. It's the African personality that we have to reach as a people, right? And in order for us to do that, we have to really understand our culture, and we have to do away with this subculture that we have not only developed but accepted as being our culture, like the destructive lyrics in the rap industry, in the hip hop, where they consider it to be a culture. I never say it's a culture,
No.
because of all of the damage that it has done to our community, all of the young rap artists who have been murdered or ended up in jail, where now instead of it being something that's uplifting and inspiring and motivating, like the music that our parents grew up with, the music that we grew up with in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, things that basically would inspire you instead of put you in a negative state of mind when it comes to your black sisters. Denigrating your black sisters, dehumanizing your black sisters, right? Dehumanizing the brothers. And then it penetrate our ears and our minds, and we think that that's our culture. That is not our culture.
No.
Our culture is a high culture, and it's important that we understand our culture. And the only way we're going to know our culture is to Sankofa, to go back and retrieve what our ancestors left for us. Not only our ancestors, with the great scholars that we have living here today, and historians and revolutionaries, and learn from them.
Right. So when we say love in the liberation context, what does that mean?
You want to take that, Doctor?
Well, I think we have to remember that love is not fuzzy and emotional. It's grounded. And love is something that has a principle, it has a structure, responsibility, and accountability. And so, those are what makes society, that's what makes civilization. So love is accountable. And in a society where accountability, when you have a country that won't even take responsibility for 400 years of atrocity, you cannot say that country loves you.
Right.
And anything that is remotely associated with love, you cannot say that this country loves you. So when you talk about the context of African love or civilization, it first has to come with responsibility and accountability. And so when we talk about love, love leaves no one behind. Love teaches, but it also disciplines. Yeah. So love is not just letting people just get off the hook because, like Brother Ausar said, we've named it as culture. So, after a while, that becomes something very degrading.
Right.
And if I love you, I'm going to hold you to a high standard.
That's right.
Because love has a standard. And it expects high of you. And so if walking around with your pants down is acceptable, then we don't love one another. If having children that you don't know who the father is, and you have to go on the Maury Povich show to find out, we got a problem. Now, I can see if you missed it one time, but if somebody can build a whole entire show off you, a whole network off of you, we have a problem as a people. And that is why our love has to have a standard. So when we talk about love, we have to also talk about getting the treatment that we need so that we can be more effective in our communities, businesses, self-respect to ourselves. That is the love that we should be looking for. Love has a look. We know what love is not, but we should also know what love is. And that is why I say that, that is not a myth, because we can see how other cultures love each other. The Asian culture, they have a whole Asian community. If you go to New York or wherever, without them saying, that you have Chinatown. Yeah. And their money flows throughout for them, by them, all of those things for them. And there is no disrespect. No. So where is the love that we're supposed to have for one another? Right. And let me say this, when you turn a people into to mimic animalistic behavior, even the basic principles of animals love their own children, their own offspring. Oh, yeah. Now, you have some that may eat their own offspring, but for the most part, there is a care there. When we as humans take on a culture that says, we don't care what happens to you, or we look at a prison population, we may say the word school to prison pipeline, but what are we doing to change it? Because that love should say that is not our standard. Like Brother Ausar says, some things are not our culture. So then why do we allow it? Love would say, no, excuse me, that's not us. So this must be rigged. This must be systematically created and designed. Something is wrong. So where is our outrage for the lack of love and the outcomes of not loving one another the way we're supposed to?
So how does love how does love become an organizing principle and not just an emotion?
Through knowledge.
Okay.
Through knowledge, through understanding that it's a spiritual connection, and the higher we raise our consciousness, the more we understand that love is a value and principle that's all encompassing. Right? That's why in our Shetawat Netta enjoins the protection of nature.
Come on.
We had to have the love of nature, the love of life, right? The love of the elements, right? Understanding that I am because we are, therefore I am. The love of the whole, collective consciousness, as opposed to collective ignorance by not understanding and knowing who we are. That's why the opposite of love is hate. That's why when you don't have the knowledge of self, a lot of times, unfortunately, we start to become self-loathing and self-hating, where we start to dislike our brothers and sisters because we see ourselves as lesser than what we really are because of the way we've been indoctrinated to think lesser of ourselves, to think that we come from us from slavery instead of understanding the royalty that we come from. So through the knowledge of self, we start to understand the love of self and understand that it's a universal self, right? And it's like Dr. Kim said, it's not no mushy type of love. It's a higher understanding of what we have to do to protect our
That's good.
children, protect our women, protect our communities, and also humanity. And when I'm talking about humanity, I'm talking about the African man, woman, and child, or the black man, woman, and child. Because, it's evident that a large segment of humanity has turned their backs on African people.
It's true.
Right? With the mistreatment that we continuously are up under. So in order for us to really, truly become liberated as a people, first thing we have to do is change the way we think, our minds, right? Change our actions, our practices, and understand that a large section of the world has not only looked down on us, but put their foot on our necks to keep us from rising up. That's why our quest has to be for liberation, but it has to be for global power. And we have everything that it takes to become a global power as African people, especially with the resources that we have on the continent of Africa. And I think that that's something that, I feel like we should focus on more. I know we're focusing a lot on reparations. This is the decade of reparations, but I feel like we could do more than one thing at one time.
Absolutely.
I think that, I had a great conversation with Baba Atmos yesterday. Shout out to Baba. And I had asked him a question, and he was talking about evicting everybody out of Africa, all the foreigners, which I feel like would be a great idea if we can evict them out, take control of our own resources, where it would benefit all Africans on the planet. Because we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars a year that others exploit Africa from. And I think that sometimes I don't want to say shame to talk about it, but we don't want to talk about it in depth the way it need to be talked about.
That's right.
As far as foreigners being over there in Africa and reaping the benefits of what should be for the people on the continent of Africa and those of us in the diaspora.
That's good.
Yeah. So it's this I had this on my mind. The Nation of Gods and Earths got in their universal alphabets, I think it's number 12, the L, but it's love, hell, right. But the way I take it is you got to have enough love for yourself to go down, once you go through these hell, those paths of destruction you might think, but it's necessary to go through that fire to start moving in the righteous way. Right. And once you get that knowledge of self for yourself, and then you'll realize how much you love. When you love yourself, really, your true self, then you will love your people the same.
That's good.
And then you'll get into, you'll be more into the community, boots on the ground, I like to say. Too often communities focus on external struggle while overlooking the internal bonds that sustain long-term freedom. In Pan-African thought, love is not substantial. It is revolutionary commitment, expressed through how people choose partners, raise children, and organize households. These relationships create the social and generational infrastructure of liberation, Black liberation, a BB for Hody, like Brother Escents like to say all the time. Yes. So, Dr. Kim, why is it important that we as Black people build intentional, principled relationships in the struggle for liberation?
Well, I once heard a statement that says, I am you and you are me. When we build, we have to think about each other. There is no I in we. And so we're building together to build something, a legacy for our children, for the next generation, and to remember our ancestors. So we're really just passing on many of the principles that were already established. And so when we build, we have to also protect what we build. That is why it is important for us to love long term It can't be mushy because we all know that as soon as you offend me and my feelings are hurt, well, how long does it take for us to gain back the traction that we need? So it has to be based off principles. It has to be based off of something that's long lasting and sustaining, that our children can look around and understand that love is also business. It's about taking ownership of the human need. And that is something that, and we have a great creator who have already given us that example. In Africa, we see daily that from the beginning of time, we were endowed with resources. Resources were given to us. We don't have to go take anybody's resources. So we don't develop a mindset of thievery, robbery, manipulation. Those are things that come from the outside. The westernized, we don't have to enslave somebody to eat or to build our institutions. Why? Because everything was already supplied for us. We were just given the power to maintain and to make sure everyone had. Now, that is the pattern of practice that we must go back to. When we build with the understanding that nothing belongs to us because it all belongs to us.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. Brother, saw you later add to that.
Yes, that's straight
That's a
from
great point.
that's straight
Yeah.
from Patal Hotel.
Okay.
What belongs to one belongs to all.
Yes. And we can't take it with us. You know, bless our Egyptian brothers are. They only put it in the tomb, but they understood.
Yes.
Whatever's on that other side is just on that other side.
That's right.
Yeah. Brother, saw you later add on to the question.
What's the question again?
Why is it important that we as Black people build intentional, principled relationships in the struggle for liberation?
Because that's number one. The relationships and the principle, because the principles are the most important thing that help to shape our culture.
Yes.
Right? And our culture is very important because the culture involves, what we think, our philosophies, our psychological makeup, and what we do, our actions, our practices, right? So they need to be basically African centered, like what we teach the children, Shetawat Netta, and what we teach the children, the 10 virtues of an initiate, control your thoughts, right? Understand the African centered thoughts, the benefit Africa based off of Mayat, truth, justice, righteousness, order, balance, harmony, reciprocity, high value principles, right? Steadfast in purpose, understanding what our purpose is, the main purpose, the great awakening, to know thyself, right? Once we know ourselves, our minds become lucid and everything else falls into place. So we're looking at collective consciousness, right? So once we're able to get collective consciousness, and then we'll be able to be on the same frequency, which is very important. And then that way we know how to move forward so that we can, overcome the oppression, overcome the exploitation, and overcome all the other harms that has happened to us.
Mm-hmm. And you were just hinting around it, but you stayed on the principal topic, of course. But I want to ask it so you can elaborate more. How do relationships either strengthen or weaken the liberation work?
Wow, that's a great question, brother. And it's like, because a lot of times the enemy be right in the room with us, and we don't know it, right? And now we're talking about those who betray us, right? The traitors. Can you ask the question again, please?
How do relationships either strengthen or weaken liberation work?
Right. It strengthens it when you have honor and when you have understanding and when you're loyal and when you put your people first. You build with brothers and sisters. Like, for instance, we have a great relationship with Dr. Elijah Mickle, Baba Atmos. Strong relationship, right? We've had a relationship probably, about 7 years he's been my Jagna, right? And it has helped us out tremendously.
Yes.
He gave me the encouragement and inspired me to start, using my voice on the radio, interviews and things of that nature. Also, with the community garden, he's just those type of relationships where he's able to, help me out, with ideas and things that we can do to help our children, to help shape our children, right? So that's an important relationship, to have a relationship with a Jagna or a mentor. Also, other relationships that are important, like the relationship we just built with in Cobra, and Baba Watella, who has sent me some really, really good information that's going to help us. Right now, the type of relationships that can hurt us, unfortunately, are when we try to work with entities that are anti-black and anti-African, and this is part of the trial by error, because a lot of times in this revolutionary move, right, for liberation, sometimes you're going to try things that are not going to work, but we got to pick ourselves up and we got to keep working towards the goal of liberation. So a lot of times the relationships that we think might can help really are there to hinder us, right? And we pick up on that unfortunately, it took me a few years, but I finally picked up on it, right? And it's better. That's why when we talk about Kuji Chagalia, self-determination, why that's so important, that we depend on ourselves for the things that we need, because we can never expect the enemy to play a part in our liberation movement. Everything they're going to do is to try to keep their foot on our necks.
You want to stab at it?
Well, I think relationships are important because relationships are something that you build over time. And we have to build things that are more sustainable. Relationships, trust. I think, being in a capitalist society or being placed in a society where things are more you're in survival mode. You develop an instinct where you don't trust. And if I don't trust you, I can't do business with you. Our marriages, our relationships, our interpersonal relationships, they don't survive if we're not building them. And so it is important that we learn the lesson of how to interact with humanity, listen, not just be heard. There are skills that we have to build back in our humanity, in the essence of our humanity, because so much of it has been stripped. If we look at the 400 years or well over the 400 years that we've been here, much of what has happened to us, whether we're conscious about it or not, is an attempt to break down our own trust amongst each other.
That's right.
That in itself is a war, because for me to love me is one thing, but for me to love you is another. And so you have people now, like you say, Brother Kevin, who are self-loathing. And so we think that loving ourselves, not just knowing ourselves, loving ourselves, we've come up with this concept that loving ourselves is all about me. But when you're healthy, not only can you love yourself, but you can love other people. Right. And that is a true indication that our communities are healthy. When we love ourselves, but also love our community. It shows in how clean our streets are. It shows in the businesses that we create amongst each other. And if they're not temporal, we look, let's be honest, we can go to our community now and say what businesses are sustaining us. And it's the church building. It is funeral homes. It is salon and beauty barbershops. So if we don't have those four in our community, we can't even call our areas economically sustainable, because that's what has been leading the economic engine, very small engine, in our communities, where some of our pastors don't even want to live in the same community as the community. Yeah. So what kind of love are we really displaying? What kind of institutions are we building based off of the relationships we have with each other? Because relationships, our community should show. It should be the representation as to what the love level is amongst us.
Somebody told me funeral homes and bail bonding will always.
I'm sorry, we forgot tobacco shops now,
and tobacco shops now,
and sweepstakes. So
Something you hinted around. Then why are family and household structure significant?
I think we are now. Are they significant, or why are they lacking the love that we should see? Well, of course they're important,
Right.
but so much of our relationships are built on our own internal conflicts that we never get to learn how to love one another. So most people are still dealing with baggage from parental abuse or parental misuse or no parents at all or the wrong type of parents. And so we take this, just like we talk about legacy and building, well, we take all the baggage and the garbage with us, and we don't know how to effectively let go of those things. And what we do is we see a new slate of a person. We look and we see another person, and we think new slate, but you still got old garbage. So what you do is you basically interact your garbage with the other person's garbage, and you never learn how to clean up together. And so that is why we don't effectively move forward. It's because nobody wants to take down the garbage, because we've always almost gave ourselves the right to hold on to it. Now, let's take hip hop for an example. That's why it's very dangerous for us to, the words that we say, I hear us talk about the principles, know thyself. There are principles that are etched in stone that said, this is our guideline.
Right.
This is what we should be living by. This is what we should be teaching the children. Well, what happens when you bring on an entire culture who welcomes baggage and don't want to let it go? And somebody will pay you to keep it. Somebody will pay you to sleep in it, roll in it, give it away. Matter of fact, you get more points, just like one of those video games, if you keep the baggage, then let it go. The video game says if you shoot the person or you roll over the person in Miami Vice or any of those, these arcade games, you get points for the garbage. Mm-hmm. And we have developed a culture that says, I don't want to be healed. I want to steal, kill, rob, and get by. So then how can a community be healthy if a huge percentage of it only gets paid to keep the baggage? Then you get an educated portion of your community who gets points or gets salaries if they say nothing about it. So we have both ends of a community who have been robbed of communication. You cannot have an effective relationship with anything if being negative is the foundations of your existence. And if that is what it keeps us sustained, that we'll pay you to be negative or we'll pay you to hold on to the pain. Usually a human wants to be healed. Yes. I think it's natural. Would we not say that? That a human wants to be healed. That's why we go to the hospital. But anytime we start wallowing in pain and don't want to know ourselves, and that's where the whole drug issue comes in, and, all of these things that numb the pain instead of deal with the pain, then you just create communities of culture of detriment. And we have to say, hold on, somebody has to be sober. Where are our elders at? Somebody has to poke the bear. Somebody has to say, this is not us. And then demand that the change comes. Demand, not ask, not request. But, they even have in the world an IVC. If we know that you can't make it, we'll wrap you up and put you somewhere where you can get some healing. And we have not done that for our people. We are just allowing them to wallow, promote, and even live in it in ways that we shouldn't have to.
Right. Brother, so let me ask you this real quick. What does a liberation-centered relationship look like?
A liberation what?
Centered relationship.
Oh, wow.
A liberated centered relationship is when you have liberational thoughts and actions, your practices. A liberational relationship is when basically you're operating on the same frequency. Mm-hmm. You understand the goals and objectives. You understand the enemy, the oppressors. You understand the principles and values that are to be taught. that's going to help to free us and liberate us. Like we always talk about our thoughts, the way we think, they have to be liberational thoughts, right? Our speech, what we say, we have to have a liberational language.
That's right.
Right? And that we are basically always in constant dialogue about, the liberation struggle and what it's going to take, right? So liberation relationships are very important. We must form them. We must form them with the community,
That's right.
Because the community has to be one of the center points of the liberation struggle, like what we just talked about, the family, right? The value of the family. It's important for us to understand the value of African life, because it's something that, is always devalued. Just like the 1-year-old child that was killed in Mississippi by a police officer, right? Because
Yes.
accused the mother or her sister or friend, whoever it was, of stealing.
Right.
That's not a death sentence. Then come to find out they didn't even steal nothing. They had a receipt and everything. So
Wow.
it's obvious, and it's important for us to recognize, right, that our lives have no value when it comes to our oppressors, our enemies. We have to value one another and not take the sides of the enemy. We have to be in direct opposition to anything that the oppressor or enemy does to us. Just like I had stated on this show before, as far as what Baba Akmo shared with me, that anytime somebody does something that's anti-African, we have to talk about it.
That's good.
And we have to speak on it.
That's
the same
right.
way the Jews when it comes to anti-Semitism.
That's true.
We have to see ourselves as the highest level spiritual beings on the planet, because we're the original people. We can't see nobody above us. Like the way they try to say that they're the chosen people. They can say what they want. It don't make it true. We have to see ourselves as the chosen people because we're the original people. And that's why it's so much energy and effort put on keeping us and holding us down. So at the center of our liberation movement and thoughts have got to be unity, love, loyalty, honor, and then we have to go for global power. And we can't play no games, right? And we have to be confident. That's why we need warriors. We need real warriors. We just don't need people who can rap about it and talk about how bad they are when it comes to shooting down one of their own brothers and sisters.
And that's the truth.
Because that ain't nothing right there.
Right.
That's self-loathing and that's self-hatred, and that's exactly what these music industry executives want. They want the chaos and the confusion in our communities that are being used by our own young brothers and sisters, instead of using their creative, artistic talents in a way that's going to uplift our community, uplift our culture, right? Uplift our people, so that we can really understand what liberation. So we got quite a fight on our hands, and it's a global fight. But we are basically moving in the right direction with this decade of reparations, but we cannot take our foot off the gas. We got to turn it up. And we got to find these warriors out here. And I ain't just talking about the brothers, I'm talking about the sisters. Because we got some powerful sisters out here, you know what I mean, who speak about liberation. And they know how the black man has got to rise up, right, and take his place on the planet.
Take your place.
Because the one thing that the European man fear more than anything, and that's the black man, the African man. That's why they want to keep us disunited. And that's why it's so important for us to understand that when we're talking about liberation, we're talking about love, we're talking about loyalty, we're talking about honor, we're talking about power, and we're talking about action.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, said a mouthful, because a liberated center relationship, basically, we all got to be flowing on the same wavelength, with the same mindset and the same energy putting forth. But it's a lot of obstacles out there, though. Like you stated a few, but Dr. Kim just stated a few also. It's plenty of obstacles for us to cross. And it sounds like one of the main common denominators is this entertainment industry that we had to go through, because that do shape our culture a lot.
Yes.
and shapes the mind.
Well, shapes the mind a lot because it's not our culture.
Right.
Right. It's a subculture that we and it's all sporadic. It's here, it's there, it's drug using, it's drug dealing, it's disrespect for our men and women the same. And it is bad. So let me let's talk about loyalty and a little bit of so loyalty in African liberation means loyalty to the people, the cause and the vision of a united African. It is substantial through consistent action and mutual support and resistance to oppression. When consciousness is weak or fragmented, loyalty becomes unstable and movements become vulnerable to division.
Yes.
So Brother Asar, how are consciousness and loyalty connected, and how has disloyalty hurt the African liberation movement?
Right. Consciousness and loyalty run side by side, right? Because it's important that we raise our consciousness to a level where we become incorruptible, right? And that's why when we're going through initiation, that's why they put the bandages on the mummy. They mummified it, right? That way it protected the mummy, right, from the rodents that once they buried them. And it's the same thing when we're going through initiation in life and we're learning, right? Our knowledge is to protect us, right, from being harmed. And once we are protected from being able to penetrate our minds, is no possible way that we can turn on our brothers and sisters. That's why I say I am firmly established in the knowledge of self. I am incorruptible because there's nothing that anybody can do to make me turn against my brothers and sisters, our people. It's not going to happen. Right? They say everybody got a price. Everybody don't have a price.
That's good.
Some things are
Tell it, brother.
priceless.
Come on, brother. Come
Right?
on.
Some
Preach on.
things you can't buy.
That's right.
Right. And loyalty you can't buy. Loyalty you got to give from the heart because you have a higher understanding and your consciousness now reach the level where you understand the connectedness that we have as a people, right? And also being the original people, which is very important, being the original scientists. So we have to have confidence within ourselves. And when we raise our consciousness to a high level, not only do we have confidence in ourselves, but we have confidence in our brothers and sisters.
That's good.
Right. Now, disloyalty has hurt us in many ways. Disloyalty has hurt us in the liberation fight and thrown us back, right? And that's why we got to learn from history. Like when they killed Patrice Lumumba, the Prime Minister of Congo, I think it was 1961. The Congo is still in chaos today because his vision and his ideas were so on point that there's no possible way that our enemies wanted that to influence our brothers and sisters where they could see the light, right? So he was basically betrayed by one of his close officials. The same as Thomas Sankara, right? But thank the Creator and thank our ancestors that we now have Captain Ibrahim Troy, who has picked up the mantle and following in the footsteps and standing on the shoulders of Thomas Sankara. So he was betrayed as well. Of course, it's a lot of things that happened with Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, where they were also murdered because, they had people that was close to them that weren't loyal to them. So disloyalty hurts us in so many ways, and it throws us back. But one thing that we have to understand, right, and that is it's going to happen. So we have to keep our eyes open. We have to vet the brothers and sisters that we deal with, even though you can't do but so much vetting, right? Because, a lot of times these brothers and sisters are trained in a way to fit right in, right? And then that's basically when they betray us. So basically, when we're talking about loyalty, we're talking about a high level of consciousness, right? And we're talking about a high level of understanding. And we're talking about a high level of love, right? And with loyalty comes honor, right? Because once you're loyal to your brothers and sisters, and you loyal to your family, you loyal to your community, you loyal to the children, you loyal to nature, you loyal to the whole creation, and then that way disloyalty can never creep into your soul. And the only one you really can be disloyal to is those who you are really close to, right? Those who are like you.
That's right.
Right, because we have to come together, and that's why unity is so important. And it's, unfortunately, it's a lot of negative things going around these days to try to keep us divided as a people. And that's why it's so important for us to remember Memorandum 46, because these things are put in place intentionally to keep us disunited. So we cannot let that discourage us.
Right.
We have to keep a positive mindset and recognize that, a lot of our great ancestors, they never gave up on the vision or the mission, and we can't give up on it neither.
No. And the mindset is very important in being loyal and honorable. Real quick, and then Dr. Kim, I'll let you add in, weigh in on it. I remember during my incarceration time, I didn't lock my locker, and the guys used to always be like, "Man, you ain't gonna lock your locker. You can just leave your locker open." And I'm like, "Look, I don't have the mindset of thievery or deception, so I just don't think of it on that level. So I never even, I didn't think of nobody taking anything or something because my mindset wasn't there. I'm sorry." Dr. Kim, you like to weigh in on
I think that's a great concept. I think about often, and I'm probably hear some of my elders out there, Baba Atmos and even Mother Bobbitt, who may know what I'm talking about when they say, it was a safer place to live in. The world was a safer place to live in 1970s, even though, we had racism. But I remember us leaving our doors open. And in the morning, the community would just come, "Hey, how you doing?" And they would open the door and walk in without basically, they introduced themselves. But we didn't really, pride ourselves in overlocking. Oh, we have every alarm system known to man now. And can see you while I'm at work, at my door. We just have so much security. But, you said something very profound, Brother Escents. And I remember teaching in the county jail. And when they asked me, "Well, Dr. Kim, what do you want to teach?" Well, I really don't know what I want to teach, but I don't have a name for it. It's called life. And the thing about it is, life is supposed to work. If we went by the original roadmap, robbery is something that you had to make up because the Creator gave us more than enough. Right. I used to teach the concept of the Creator gave us not an apple, but He gave us a seed. And that seed, once you plant it, produced a tree. Once you, when you come from that tree, you walk away looking at thousands of apples on one tree, but inside each one of those apples is more seeds. Yeah. And so if you say that you had to rob me to eat, then you're a liar. Yeah. You might be lazy. You didn't get the seed. Somebody may have held from you a seed to plant, but you can never say that you were supposed to go hungry because the Creator never created it to be so. If you got shot, killed, or you had to rob somebody to eat, then somewhere we missed it. And so when you say, "I'm in prison," and you still want me to lock my stuff up, then that means the mind is still locked up. If you didn't learn and you in prison not to be a thief, then when do you ever learn? Because that's the last place. And if we have that mentality on the outside, then we are also in prison without the bars. Oh. And so we're going to have to go back because we as a people, we're very generous. We talk about, I hear Brother Kevin talk about so many of the great leaders from Africa, but we have to talk about Mansa Musa, who was so generous, he gave everything away. And that became a negative to the Western world because they just couldn't handle that kind of love or that kind of distribution. Well, I don't have to have it all. We have plenty. Would you like some? Well, here, take it anyway. When we get back to that, we have mastered most of the things that make us not just disloyal to society, but to ourselves. We are robbing ourselves of love if I have to watch my back of you.
Right, that's right.
If my new job is I'm more security. Do you know how much tension and hypertension and ailments that creates in the human body. We were never designed to kill one another.
That's right.
We were never designed to rob and worry about who was going to eat. That should never have been a law, because the laws were already made for us. So, going back to the African Center, we're talking about a place and a culture that had an abundance.
Yes.
And I wore the T-shirt, everyone, that shows that each place in Africa has more than enough resources.
That's right.
And this is a reminder to you, our children, that no, robbery is not a culture, and it certainly isn't ours. Dig in the ground good enough, and I'm sure you'll find something to live off of.
So I was still looking at the T-shirt. I like that. It's nice.
Thank you
Always
so
got the
much.
good ones. So how does political consciousness support collective responsibility?
That's a great question. Read it one more time.
So how does political consciousness support collective responsibility?
Because political consciousness is understanding not only local affairs, but also world affairs and national affairs.
Yes.
And how everything works together. So when you're politically conscious, right, you're going to see the injustice, right? And you know that where there's injustice, there can be no justice,
That's
right? So if we're talking about having a political consciousness, we're talking about things that affect what? People. Because politics affect people.
That's right.
Right. So when you have some people, you have what they consider to be the haves and the have-nots. When you're politically conscious, what you're going to do is you're going to be in opposition to anything that's going to hurt those who need the help the most, right, and help those who already have it, which is we're talking about what? Capitalism, right? And when we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about the reason why, well, I ain't going to say the only reason, but one of the main reasons why they basically transported us over here, it was considered to be the transatlantic slave trade or global Eurasian trafficking, right, bringing us over here, right? So it's about capitalism, for one, dominating us, and I think that, politically, when we're talking about being political conscious, right, we have to really understand history and how we got to this point. And who does the politics benefit?
That's good.
And who does the politics hurt, right? Because we'll play this political game here in the United States, where we think that we're being a part of the decisions being made because we might vote or whatever. But when it comes to policies, when it comes to laws and things of that nature, we're still suffering.
That's right.
So when we become politically conscious, we understand that this country has done nothing, right, to benefit black people or African people, right? And then we have the international political arena, like the United Nations and things of that nature, right? But we have made a little headway with the resolution being passed, making the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime in humanity, right? So being politically conscious, we have some brilliant minds, here in the diaspora, also in Africa. And I think that, the brilliant minds come from studying our past great leaders, like Kwame Nkrumah, who we spoke on earlier, and Marcus Garvey, because now we're putting things in basically a language, and we talked about this earlier, right? Having a language of liberation, a liberational language, and they're putting it down on paper for everybody to see, and they just had some, I think in Ghana,
Yes.
over the last week, right?
Yes.
Because we're going to build on the decade of reparations, right? So that's
right.
being politically conscious when we're talking about reparations, because see, reparations is something not only that we're striving for, but it's also like Baba Watella shared with us, it's a strategy for us to organize our brothers and sisters, right, and educate on the things that we need to be educated on, right? So being politically conscious is very important, right? Because and being organized with our political consciousness, so that we can do things to change some of the policies and the laws here in the United States, right? Because like Derek Bell talked about in critical race theory, right? How it was embedded in the very fabric of this society. When I say embedded, I'm talking about systemic and institutional racism.
That's right.
So also being politically conscious, we have to deal with the reality of the situation that we face here, not only in the United States or in the diaspora, but globally.
Yeah. And like you were stating, we got to be politically conscious, not only nationally, but internationally as well. You got to know the politics of the UN. You need to start learning all the politics of the AUs and
Right.
and all over the globe. Dr. Ken, you want to weigh in on?
Well, I think policy solidifies what we believe. is what we believe in action. Policy provides protection or the lack thereof.
Okay.
And so when we are conscious about what we know and believe, then we now create the structure. And that's what the political aspect is, because now we're placing it in policy so that we can be protected from or unto something or another. So political consciousness is a powerful thing, and it's a must-have, because our ideas just can't stay loft in our minds. It has to become a real reality to the very fabric of how we live day to day.
And if I may, I really, what's going on in Africa. I know it's still, we got some negative things that we have to get together. But when you look at the AES in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and what they've been able to accomplish,
Yes.
with kicking the French out and nationalizing their resources. And then you look at what Ghana and their resolution, to the United Nations, how that was passed as the transatlantic slave trade being the greatest crime against humanity. We see a movement
Yes.
taking place
Absolutely.
in Africa, right? But we still got obstacles and we still got challenges, right? And I think that, with Burkina Faso nationalizing, a lot of their resources where it benefit the people, that the rest of Africa, we have to pick up on that. And we have to do like they did in the AES, start evicting those who are there to exploit and oppress and try to dominate.
That's right.
Get them out of Africa.
That's right.
Right? Because I think that if we put our focus on that, right, and Africa and Africans benefiting off of the resources, because the resources have basically really produced for the whole world
Yes.
for hundreds of years. That's
Yes.
why they had the Berlin Conference in 1884 and 1885 and had to split Africa up, because it was all about the resources.
That's right.
They knew was there: gold, iron, oil, anything you could think of, cobalt, uranium, right? And they're finding even more and more resources, right? So I think that, a lot of times, sometimes, we have so much to think about, because this liberation movement, there's so many different components. But I think that if we spend a little bit more time on, let's evict the foreigners, right? And let's basically do like we always say, do for self and become a world power. And don't be scared of becoming a world power. And I think sometimes we're afraid of freedom and we're afraid of liberation because we're so used to having somebody's foot on our neck that we feel like we don't even know how to operate if we take their foot off our neck.
That is so
It's like
true.
even some of the leaders seem like they are fearful, when it comes to the Europeans. That's why we need fearless leaders like the brothers in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso.
Come on. And let me say this, Brother Kevin, because you're spot on when you talk about that fear, that internalized fear that says we can't live without the oppressor. Where we are too scared to handle our own resources. We don't know what it is to be able to operate without them, and even a good, just an abusive relationship where we act like we have to be.
Right.
Again, we are those who establish civilization. We should not walk in fear. as to what civilization should look like. And we don't need to be controlled. And that's 400, 500 years of saying that I need your approval to lead. I need your approval. So yes, anything that's an enemy towards our true self should be evicted.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about the resources, I was steady looking at Dr. Kim's shirt. I'm looking at clothes and textile,
Yes.
livestock, coffee beans, just to name a couple others. You know,
Yes.
the iron ore, the uranium, the gold. We know about all that, but just think about the rest of it. I mean, all resources is there, and but let me make this point real quick. And I'm all over the place, but politics in our community got to change also, and I'm talking about like just sitting around discussing who gonna bring the case to the barbecue, who gonna bring the hot dogs. You know, our conversations got to change in our communities also.
Yes.
So I mean,
That's
just
good.
very local. I mean, the local politics have to change, and I'm talking about just from in the household politics now, or just with your friends amongst you and all.
Well, we have to
So-
come out of the westernized way of thinking. You know, we are a global entity
Yeah.
of people, not just we get so bogged down with what does the Western life provide us or European life. So we start talking their language, we talk their standard, and then we expect just to get what it is that the European lifestyle gives us. We have to go. We are beyond that. We have another way of handling economics, even education. Like you said, when we study the westernized way of living, it affects us in every dynamic, every socially, physically, politically. First of all, just basic, and I just remember this in school, how I understood that black women needed more vitamin D. Blacks, period, needed more vitamin D. They needed the sun. Why? Because we came from a continent where the sun was befriended us. And so that was our plus. We get over here, and there is no laws that say, that dictate, please let African Americans out on recess, the children out an additional 30 minutes. We need more. We don't incorporate what we need in our everyday life because we have succumbed or acquiesced to westernized living. And something that simple, you would think, we would demand those things. However, we don't even know what is true about us, so we don't even understand what we should be fighting for. Because policies come from an understanding of what is needed. If you don't know what you need, how can you put it in writing? You have to have a level of understanding, and it goes back to intellectualism. Where's our intellect when it comes to our own well-being? No offense, but we have HBCUs. These colleges promote blackness. Can we see that in our criminal justice system? When they leave those institutions, do they bring the need of changing the criminal justice system with them? What are we saying? What are we doing? Is it evident in the hospital what blacks need? Is it evident in healthcare? What is it about us that we can say the African diaspora has its own standard? Our own standard, so the policies match us. Not just voting.
Right.
We over here still fighting over voting. No, I need the resources. We need the space that the Creator have given us. If you took me out of my space out of Africa, you better make Africa over here for me.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and very important points. We can't just be fighting for vote.
No.
So we got to understand what
Affordable housing. Come on, we've been over here for 400 years. That's an insult for you to tell me that you need somewhere you can afford to stay. We've been over here for 400 years. Where's the wealth that you stole? Give me back that first, and then I'm sure we can afford whatever you. How did your generational wealth cause you to have a mansion downtown Raleigh, but we have to get subsidies? No, something is wrong with the narrative. And of course, you can hear African Americans reciting such nonsense because, again, they don't know who they are. They let them pitch. And again, they let Europeans pitch to them over and over of a broken relationship, so they always start you over. You have a broken and is this not what we see amongst the European relationship? Is that we break you and then we say, okay, now start over. Start over. And that is what we look like in this relationship. And that is why this is such an important topic, because we can't allow people to keep breaking us so we don't have momentum.
If I may, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about loyalty. Right?
Yes.
And I'm thinking about what Dr. Kim was just saying a lot of times. And the first thought that came to my mind is sometimes when brothers and sisters are working in the system, they become complacent.
Yes.
With the indoctrination and refuse to challenge anything against the system, but will challenge everything that we're doing to try to uplift our community, even if it's speaking up for children or trying to properly educate children. They have a problem with it because it's coming from black people.
That's right.
And not the Europeans. Right? It's like it has to be stamped, like Dr. Kim said, their standards. Right? We have our own standards.
Right.
Right? We have our own values, our own views. We have our own principles, our own way of doing things. Right?
Right.
And it's important, that we recognize this and identify this and work towards goals that are going to empower
That's
the
right.
family, the community, and humanity, right? And a lot of times we reject knowledge before we even receive knowledge. We have a closed mindset, or what a lot of people like to say, a fixed mindset, right? Or not being receptive. And we always like to talk about when we're educating to be receptive, to have an open mind, because if the mind is closed, can't nothing get in. And a lot of times we'll shut our minds down because we're anti-black and anti-African and don't even understand why or know that we are displaying those type of behaviors.
That's good.
Because of the indoctrination.
That's right.
Right? And so we become self-hating, like I stated earlier.
That's good.
Self-loathing without even knowing it because we don't understand or know who we are. Like our ancestors taught. When one loves their ignorance, leave them right there in their ignorance. If that's and we have a lot of that, because what we can't do is waste a lot of time on brothers and sisters who have their mind made up.
That's true.
That they would rather side with the enemy than side with their own brothers and sisters. And we can't waste too much time trying to convince them otherwise. They already got their mind made up. Like the one, what's the brother name on the Supreme Court?
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas. For one, right? It's no changing that mindset. Right. So we can't waste time with that. What we have to do is reach those who want to be reached, those who want to be learned. Try to inspire and encourage. Try to get our creative artists. Try to get to the singers to bring back the music of the past that was uplifted.
That's right.
Like, try to, get and this is a long reach, the hip-hop community, because they now lost their mind. You know what I mean? And they've lost their minds. And it has hurt us tremendously.
It has.
That's true.
And it's continuing to hurt us.
Right.
Right? And we, and all these old brothers, my age, they're still living back in the past, in the 80s, in the 90s, they need to let it go.
Yeah.
Right? Because that did not uplift us whatsoever. It has failed us. The school to prison pipeline, the music to prison pipeline exploded.
Yes.
With all the negative, dehumanizing, degrading, denigrating, self-hating lyrics that they portray.
It's true. True.
So we got to cut that out and we got to be serious about it. And we can't entertain that type of foolishness. And I think that if I say this because I know everybody's big in the little league football these days. They are. I mean, it's just taking over. And I say to myself, if we can invest that kind of time, effort, energy, and enthusiasm into the development of our minds, of our children's minds, their conduct, their character, their moral values, understanding who we are, we'll have our liberation overnight. The next generation. Instead of trying to prep these young brothers to be football stars, let them grow up to be intellectuals. revolutionaries, right? Fighting the good fight for humanity, fighting the good fight for all African people.
Makes sense to me. Go ahead, Dr. Kim.
Oh no, that's powerful. I'm over here just in. That's powerful. That well said, Brother Ausar. That let's change the direction by reshaping our mind and exercising our brain instead of just our body. And if we're going to exercise our body, it can't just be for the exploitation of trying to survive America. But every other day we don't even we're not conscious of what we eat. We're not exercising. But you got your child out there trying to make sure that they're fit for America's exploitative system. And that's why it's so important that if we're not talking about repair, then we're actually talking about racketeering. And racketeering is something that you've broken, and then you come back try to act like you're fixing it. So when the system continues to break you, now they can make you into what they want you to be. And what they've made is a whole nother industry. Instead of repairing you, they've created an industry called this football leagues and this stuff. They've, instead of saying, let's repair you mentally, and you'll take care of your body. As a matter of fact, you'll be more concerned with what's going on in your head, and then your head will produce a better body. But now people don't even care what's in your head. They just care about what your body can do for them. That's slavery.
That's exactly what it is.
If that's not slavery, I don't know what is. They didn't care what was in your brain. As a matter of fact, they deliberately starved you of education. You were not allowed to read or write. You were only just body for them. Now we're doing it to ourselves. And that is a disgrace.
The way we organize these young brothers, that by the thousands and tens of thousands for football and basketball, we need to organize the young boys and the girls for the knowledge of self.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why we haven't seen the creativity in our communities. We don't build anything. We're not producing anything because they're not putting anything in the mind. They're only, making sure that your body is fit so that you can bring entertainment to their whatever D1 or whatever level of these sports organizations. And if you're not creating that for them, then they don't see the black man as a viable piece of work anymore.
Right. And to piggyback on y'all points real quick, my son, 12, he'll be 13 real soon. We play sports, because I enjoy basketball.
Sure.
So I take my son, he's on the travel team, and I train him quite a bit. But the whole time, I'm always installing in him about love, loyalty, family, community, love, loyalty, honor, and integrity. And that's what I use, and that's what we talk about most of the time. When we get in the gym, we work out because I know it's important for him to develop his body.
Sure.
And it ain't just for the sport. I ain't letting him know that fully yet, that the developing of the body ain't just for the sport. But the discipline that he get from it, I enjoy that part of it also. So you just got to give them different values at the same time. Like you're saying, you got to raise their intellect at the same time. So, but I just want to make that point. But the other point I want to make, some brother Saw was saying, Sister Harriet Tubman said, how she said that she freed hundreds of slaves, but she would have freed thousands only if they knew they were slaves.
That is correct.
Let's go back into what you was talking about earlier about, people not even knowing or I forget exactly how you said it. But
pretty good.
Yeah, but you understand. And Sister Harriet carried her gun with her at the same time because she knows sometimes they might get there and then they might doggone have a flip-flop because they're so afraid of.
That is correct.
And self-hating too.
Self-hate.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. That's what it was at. We're about loathing yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Sometimes they don't even be scared. They just hate themselves so much that they hate anything that anybody
that is
like
correct.
them.
So they self-sabotage too.
Right.
Even if you're trying to help them, they would rather go back because they don't think they deserve. That's the other thing. Most of our people don't even believe that they deserve liberation, so they choose to degrade themselves. And I think Malcolm X once talked about who taught you how to hate yourself, who taught you how to hate your nose or what have you. Well, after a while, that becomes so common, and then when America will pay you to hate yourself, now you advertise your hate for yourself.
Right.
You know,
right.
you can't even judge it. They don't even have the consciousness to say something's wrong with them, because you're paying them, you're rewarding them for hate.
Right.
That is very dysfunctional as a people, and that is why we can't allow that to be on our watch.
True indeed. So a liberation movement must be able to confront betrayal without abandoning justice or discipline. Accountability is necessary, but it must serve the larger goal of protecting collective trust and moral integrity. The question is not only how to identify disloyalty, but how to respond in ways that strengthen the movement rather than fracture it further. So let me ask you, Dr. Kim, how do you think we should deal with disloyal or traitors to the cause of Black liberation?
Well, first of all, I think we should always have a standard that speaks for itself, and then have a working movement on what that should look like in our community. We just can't talk about it. We have to be about it, so that when others see, they understand what we expect. And just like, I don't think it was coincidental that when Brother Ausar, when we were all at Lions Park and he stood up to speak for the children and for our people were shocked. No, they weren't shocked. Those who knew him knew he would defend. So that's a standard that we can rely on. And those who oppose are those that we already knew would oppose. That's why we were there in the first place, because they were in opposition to treating our people a certain way. So when we talk about what it means to deal with disloyalty, we have to, like we saw, call it out. We have to address it. We can't allow it to linger, because it infiltrates our communities and it actually dismantles any unity that we would have. And I think that's the problem. We've allowed certain things to go on for so long until now it becomes cultural. I don't want to say cultural, it becomes a normalcy. And then if you are left alone and you allow it, then people believe that's okay to act in this manner.
That's right.
And that becomes a problem. So now that's how we get representatives at city council and those at the county level who come in. You pay them thousands of dollars and you give them a seat, but they don't represent anybody. And we don't call them out for just dishonoring the standard. We do have a standard. I don't care if it's a small one. Some of us actually have a standard. And it must be enforced, it must be recognized, and it must be duplicated.
So I'd like to add to.
Yes. And I want to go to one of our female principals of NET, one of the female netters, and she is the netter of war, and her actions are quick and decisively, right? So that's how we had to deal with our traitors, right? Swiftly and decisively.
That's right.
Because you can't play games when you're talking about people that's going to hurt the liberation movement. We see how it has thrown us back in Congo with the murder of Patrice Lumumba.
That's right.
And I think that the person that had him killed was in power for a long time. And the same with Burkina Faso, right? We can't have those type of things taking place once someone betrays the movement, betrays one of our leaders, or betrays our people. We got to deal with them swiftly.
That's right.
And decisively. Right, and a lot of times it can't be no second chances when it comes to loyalty, because you got one time to be disloyal, right? So I can't say everything because we on the radio, but just know we had to deal with them.
So, all right, how should movements balance accountability and justice?
Wow, that's my yacht. We got to balance it. We have to be accountable.
That's right.
Right? And we got to understand my yacht, truth, justice, and righteousness. So we always got to stand for justice.
That's right.
Right? whether we agree with it in our minds or not, because that's one of the values and principles. And if we're standing on justice, it's going to work in our favor, because if we're living by Maya, that means we're thinking Maya, speaking Maya, and doing Maya. So justice is going to be beneficial for black people. Now, injustice is something different, right? Injustice is something that we've been dealing with for a long time. I don't even know if we know what justice look like right now, but we know we striving for justice, and we know what injustice looks like.
That's right.
Right?
That's
so
right.
once we are liberated, then we're going to understand justice. Once we have power, but we're going to bring our own justice, because we can't expect others to give us justice, those who have put us in the position that we're in.
Right.
Right. So justice is very important in the movement. It's a part of Maya. Just like truth and justice work hand in hand, and righteousness.
That's right.
Right. So we got to understand how all these things work together.
That's
and we
good.
have to stand on Maya. See, and once we stand on Maya, understanding that that's one of our high principles that our ancestors left for us, and then we start to understand, where we get our power from.
That's
by
right.
standing on Maya, by standing on truth. And then we got reciprocity within Maya. A lot of times we think reciprocity is always going to be good give and take. Reciprocity ain't going to always be good. Right? Sometimes you're going to take things and you got to give it back.
That's right.
You get what I'm saying? And sometimes you got to give it back 10 times harder.
Uh-oh.
And that's something that we have to realize within our consciousness, right? When we're talking about African liberation, and we're talking about making sure the things that has happened to us will never happen to us again.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead. No.
And I'm hearing you, brother, when you say loud and clear about the action part. Love is not just a word. Love is action.
Yeah.
And anytime we are impeded, it's one thing for me not to know myself. It's one thing for me not to know who you are. But when you create the conditions where I hate myself, because like you said, the opposite of love is hate. But you create the conditions that say you have to hate yourself, or in order for you to live or survive in this world, you have to hate or dismantle yourself. Then guess what? You are on an oppressive regime, and that's inhumane. That's inhumane punishment. See, we're in America, and we're so used to being dictated by policies, but certain policies are inhumane,
Right.
and they go against the human rights, not civil rights, because civil rights was for them. Let me help you out. Civil. If you're asking for someone to be civil, that means I'm asking you to be a human. Well, that's up to them if they're going to act human or not.
Right.
But humanity requires that we love at all times. So anytime you tell me in order to survive in this world, you cannot love, then we're actually in prison, because that is animalistic for you not to love. Anything that does not promote humanity automatically lowers you on the totem pole of living or quality of life. You saying I'm going to remove certain things, such as, and I don't get too much into these acts, but DEI, or I'm going to take away your ability to make money, or you're actually sentencing me under your hate law.
Ooh.
You cannot make a law that says I am going to not allow you to eat. Those things are inhumane, and they should be charged under war crimes. But we're so used to saying, oh, well, it's a policy and it'll change. There should never be a policy allowed to say such things. Because after a while, that's not even a policy issue. That's a mental health issue. You're under a Hitler-like regime. And I don't understand how you found it necessary for you to take down Hitler, but you won't take down the Hitlers over here in America. See? and mind you, Hitler said that he learned everything he learned from who? Us.
That's how he said it.
I'm just saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Hitler said he learned his tactics from us.
Yeah.
But we went over there and dismantled him.
Right.
So then what are we doing with our own Hitlers?
Right.
Okay.
That's a good point. And speaking of what are we doing with them, Brother Ausar said, we got to be quick and decisive,
Uh-oh.
basically. So
Come
let
on,
me ask you,
execute, brother.
so what standards should guide our responses to betrayal?
What standards?
Yeah,
What you mean? What standards should guide
I
us?
mean like what like how should we what should we how should we feel, or what should we do for betrayal?
Well, that's a good question
Like,
because there's a lot of different um ways that we are being betrayed, right? And some things are open, some things are closed, some things you can't even see, right? And
That's true.
sometimes people betray even just with their thoughts. You know what I mean? They can betray us with their words. You see a lot of that
That's true.
on social media with where they use brothers and sisters to talk disparagingly about the young brother Carmelo Anthony, that was found guilty
Yes.
of murder, and he was defending himself, right? And then yet these same black people defending the Asian man child who ran the young black brother down and shot him in the back. They did.
That's right.
So it's a lot of self-hate going on.
That is correct.
And I think that we have to really understand how we hurt ourselves and we hurt each other when we don't raise our consciousness and understand who we are as a people. Now repeat the question.
so what standards? When I say
Yes.
so, when I'm saying standards, I mean like should we have
We got to have high standards. We got to have standards of Maya, truth, justice, and righteousness.
Yeah.
We can't have standards of betrayal in any level, right? And that's why consciousness is so important. And that's why, culture and community is so important. We have to teach our culture in our communities. We have to get in our communities, and we have to be active in our communities, right? And it's a struggle. When you're fighting for liberation, we have all kinds of struggles. We have financial struggles. We had struggles trying to get brothers and sisters to participate, to open up, their ears and open up their hearts and their minds to understand what the real fight is about, right? That, and we talk about this. We talk about it during football season. The distraction, right?
Yes.
How so many black people can get so excited and put on jerseys and fight and root and cheer for a team, but won't even root and cheer for their own brothers and sisters.
true.
Won't root and cheer for ourselves.
Right.
Won't take the time to learn who we are, our culture, and our history. There's so much material out there right now that it can be overwhelming because it's so
Yes.
much material. We can never read it all in one lifetime. But it's enough material out there for all of us to read it, and we come together and share with one another.
That's right.
And that's how we build. We have to build together as a people.
cool standards got to stay got to be met at all
Maya,
times,
yes.
and never forget that reciprocity
Right.
is a part of that,
Right.
because sometimes you might have to it might have to be a quick and decisive
And it's got to be
decision
African centered, right?
be African
Because it
centered.
has to be beneficial to black people, like our ancestors, taught us. Teach the children of the great that which is useful to them, and also be a model to the children of the great. We are to be models for our children as men and women.
That's true.
Right? And if we're going to be models, we have to be cultural models that stand upright and stand on my eye. Because they say little eyes watch what the big eyes do. Right? And I'm talking about seeing what they see. So if they see us doing the right thing, and if we instill the right values and principles in them, and then they're going to do the right thing because they're going to be taught that.
That's so true.
So, the moral and practical backbone of African liberation rests on justice, unity, and the welfare of the people. At the same time, it requires visionary leadership, strategic alliances, structural transformation, and sustained self-reliance. The central question then is whether our current efforts reflect those standards in both principle and practice. So I'm going to start again with you, Dr. Kim. Based on our conversation regarding liberation and the moral standards required to achieve liberation, are we headed in the right direction?
I believe that we are. I believe that yes, there is a lot of work to be done, but remember we've been caught off guard for about 400 years, and so overall, I believe all things that are not righteous will come to an end because righteousness is the highest standard. And so, no matter if we create the standard or not, I'm sure humanity would get tired of his own pitfalls. So, I believe that we're definitely going in the right direction. And you know, there are some elements that are into play right now that is going to challenge humanity's integrity and how well we interact with each other, such as AI, such as other intellectual things that if we don't take advantage of our own intellect, there will be other entities that will. And that is going to challenge us to be more dependent on each other and our human qualities. Because after a while, you may not even need each other. And that's a lie. We will always need each other.
That's a good point. Brother Sir.
Well, I mean, that's a great point she just made about AI. I was speaking with Baba, and he was telling me, you know, he's been telling me for years about AI, right, and how we got to really pay close attention. And he was saying that, you know, they had a robot that did surgery
Yes.
on a pig, right? And that's something to think about. You know, would they be using robots on humans?
Yes.
Right. And so basically what we got to understand, that's why it's so important for us to understand the power that we have in Africa and the connection we got to have in Africa, you know, because, you know, of the resources, right? Because all this, AI can't replace everything.
That is correct.
See, AI has its purpose, right? But there's nothing like human intelligence, which is the highest intelligence. Right, and I think that, you know, when we're looking at it, right, we have to really, you know, pay close attention to what's going on in the world. That's why, you know, I'm really fortunate to have a gentleman like Baba, because he's constantly sending me things to keep me up to date what's going on in the world, so that we can be prepared, because we have to be prepared.
Got to.
And that's why one of the main things that we have to do is we have to study. Like, 'cause we some brilliant people, but we have to really, it's important. We always talk about literacy, right? And the children being able to be fluent and being able to comprehend, you know, and I think that another important thing is, what are they reading?
That's right.
Are they reading things that's going to empower them, teach them about themselves, teach them about their culture, and teach the responsibilities that we have as a people?
That's right. That's good. Because here's the thing, the lower you are on a quote-unquote economic totem pole, the more demand it is for you to understand the world around you. See, it's a sad fact, but those who are profiting off of the exploitation of others don't have to worry about survival. It's those who don't have the resources that are struggling and would have to need to know more. However, in most cases, they are the most uneducated or the most ignorant in society. And so we can't reach, and the problem is we get to the top and then we forget what it means to go back and make sure that our populations, no matter where they are equipped. And when you talk about literacy, Brother Ausar, that is a primary thing. You can't move on if you don't even know the language of those that are in your sphere or in your surrounding. You must understand what the enemy is saying and what he's not saying. You must understand what you should be saying. But if you don't even know how to speak the language, we're in a very crunch space, a crisis, as one would say. Literacy is a crisis right now. And I think we were talking about how we talk about how many years we were not allowed to read and write. But immediately after emancipation, they said our literacy rates went through the roof. We actually outperformed white America because of the thirst and the hunger.
That's right.
For understanding education. And so now we've become so complacent, we could care less whether or not we, I don't know if you all heard when this rapper last year came out and he said he didn't need to learn how to read. The rapper said he didn't need to learn how to read. His agent was going to read his contracts. And I promise you, I think Roland Martin actually, reprimanded him on his platform to say, brother, everybody needs to know how to read. You need to, because you're turning your life over to people that you barely know. Right. So, and you look at, rich don't make you smart. Being rich don't make you smart. You just be a rich dummy.
Yes.
So thank you for, sharing those principles of foundational living, how important it is for us not just to have literacy, but comprehension.
Right. So let me ask both of y'all this question. What are the greatest strengths in the current struggle, and what are the weaknesses that still need to be addressed?
Our struggle as African people, I would say our greatest strengths are for one, our knowledge and wisdom. For two, our ability to adapt and adjust and survive and to keep pushing forward. Three, I would like to say that we understand the fight. And I think that's one of our greatest strengths. Not everybody, and you can't expect everybody because, you look at Africa, and where it's 1.4 billion of our brothers and sisters, and they say 80% of Africa live under poverty conditions. Like,
wow.
So that's horrific, and we got it hard here. So I think that our strengths are the fact that we got some strong brothers and sisters who gonna continue to fight, for reparations and liberation. Our weaknesses are the weakness first and foremost is our mind, right? The way we think, and I think this goes back. And it's a reason why we think the way we think. A lot of things have happened to us, but it goes back to one of our great, Steve Biko, who said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And we constantly repeat that, right? The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. That's right. The first thing we got to get back is our minds. That's our number one weakness. And our mind is influenced through a subculture that we have adapted and that has been forced on us.
That's right.
Right? So it affects our mind because we don't know who we are. See, that's the healing of the mind. The healing cycle is once we understand the knowledge of self and who we are, once we understand our history, once we understand the Ma'afa, right? The Holocaust, not only that we experienced that, we're still experiencing.
That's right.
Right?
That's
so
good.
And that's another one of our strengths is the ability to identify, right? And now back to our weakness. Our weaknesses are that, unfortunately, a lot of our brothers and sisters don't want to open their eyes or their ears or their hearts.
That's right.
When it comes to black people, because their mind has been corrupted by corruption to think lesser of their brothers and sisters. And a lot of times, they get us with this line: "You're not like them." Like who? I am so like my brothers and sisters.
That's right. Because
I was told that when I was a young man. I didn't know who they were talking to. Right? Because you could never turn me against my friends when I was growing up. The way I had some coaches try to do, because I was pretty good in football, and try to talk down on, my friends. And we grew up in the same neighborhood. And I never forget it. This is in the 70s.
Wow.
You know what I mean? But they thought I was going to be a sellout.
Right.
But it was never in my heart to be no sellout, and I'd never be a sellout. And you could never make me feel like I'm some type of special type of black person, because we're all special.
That's true. Could you repeat that, Brother Escents?
What are the greatest strengths in our current struggle, and which weaknesses need to be addressed?
Well, I think one of the greatest things, greatest parts of our understanding of the struggle is that we understand that there is a struggle, and that this is nothing new to us. I think what our weakness is, will we create new pathways on how to alleviate the struggle? We should not be fighting the same fights in the struggle that our ancestors fought 100 years from now.
right.
That's unacceptable. And so either that doesn't work for us, or we need to be looking for a new and improved way for all of us. And so, and that in itself takes courage, because America has pitched the ball to say this is what we'll accept as success. So we hold on to that and say, we did this, our ancestors did this, and so we got to hold on to it. Well, that might have worked for then. If it doesn't work now, we can't be afraid to let it go.
And I like that because, I mean, I agree 1,000%. Not only do we learn from the ancients in the past, but also what's going on today. Like
true.
Dr. Kim just said, which is really the most important thing. You know, what's going on right now and how we got to this point and how we're going to deal with it. And also, like she said, being creative and inventive and innovative with our strategies. You know what I mean? And because, you know, even basically, you know, we think that new ideas got to come with young people. It ain't got to come with young people.
That is correct.
But we still here today. Right? We can have new ideas. Right? I got plenty of ideas. We can't say it all on the radio.
Right.
You know what I mean? But we have to have ideas.
That's right.
We have to have a vision.
That's right.
We have to be able to see. Right? And another thing I want to say is this, right? And that is as far as leadership. Why leadership is so important. We have got to find and choose